Hope you're doing well. It's Mantar Bandal. Today we are building my dream drum riser. So I'm really excited about this project. Been thinking about it for a very long time, been sketching stuff up, and I just couldn't be more excited to finally get started on this. So we're here in my lovely studio where we're gonna set the drum set up on top of the riser. The drum kit setup is gonna be its own video, but this video is all about the making of the drum riser. So here's a sketch of the riser. So this is what it's gonna look like. Two sections. So the line down the middle is basically the divider. It'll be 5 feet here, 5 feet here, so a total of 10 feet wide by 8 feet deep. And the whole purpose of this riser is to isolate the kit from the ground. So sound travels the fastest through solids, and when you're recording a drum set that hasn't been decoupled from the ground, it'll be a lot more boomier, and your microphone stands that are on the ground will pick up a lot of synthetic noise, which is being transmitted from your drums through the floor, and your microphone stands are on the floor. So when you're recording drums, you want the kit decoupled from the ground, so it'll sound much tighter and you get a better recording. So the way this is gonna work is the kit will be off the floor, it'll be on wheels. We want locking casters, so it's gonna be a layer of plywood at the bottom, and then 2x6s for the internal framing, and then another layer of plywood, and then 2 layers of moving blankets, and then 1 final layer of plywood at the top, and then carpet. I have patch bays on the front and on the tops, so that's basically for when I have my kit set up, all the microphones will be connected to the top, and that's where they'll stay. You know, I don't have to worry about deconnecting from the wall or from the board and then throwing all the cables on top. I can just leave them plugged in 24/7. It'll be nice and neat, very tidy, won't be tripping over anything. And then the cables, I can always connect at the front to, you know, another patch bay or the board or a mixer or interface or what have you. So that's the whole idea behind this riser. The moving blankets are gonna act as the isolator. So it's like essentially having this thing on top of acoustic foam. So there's a lot of different ways you can go about decoupling your kit. You can use rubber mats, you can use foam tiles, like the children's play area kind of foam, interlocking tiles. They do the trick. Anything that's gonna absorb sound is what you want your kit to be on top of. The whole idea behind this thing being able to split in the middle, and so when my kit is set up, if I need to move the kit around in the room, it'll be a lot easier moving it around as 2 separate chunks, you know, smaller chunks as opposed to one big, you know, 8x10. An 8x10 isn't gonna move much in a room, but a 5x8 is more likely to be moved around. And my kit will be set up in a way where nothing is gonna be connected down the middle. So I got this little diagram up here, that kind of like a front view of the kit. So it'll all be on a rack system and nothing will be connected in the middle. So I'll be able to split the whole kit apart in half and move it around. And there is a top view of what I'm gonna do. So we'll see what happens. I'm not the most knowledgeable as far as, you know, building goes, but I've got my diagram, and hopefully, you know, the final product looks, you know, something like this. As far as what to start with, I think my first move, I'm probably gonna start with the mounting plates. Like on the front of the riser, the mounting plates. So I will probably diagram something out in Illustrator. Each mounting plate will be about 5 inches wide by 5 inches tall, and they'll all house 12 XLR connectors. And if I get a company to just, you know, take a water jet and cut it, it'll be exact. That way, you know, when I buy the chassis mounts, they'll fit and they'll look nice. So that'll probably be my first task. I think I'm gonna go in Illustrator, diagram something out, send it off to a company, and we'll see what happens. I'm gonna mount the hardware onto the faceplates. Originally I had 4 of these commissioned to be made, but I messed up. So there's 2 different connector types. There's the male connector type and the female connector type. Now I only measured it out. I assumed both the male and the female will be the same size. They're not. So the holes were too small for the female connectors, and so I have to, you know, wait another week so they can make the adjustments on the other 2 plates. But I figured while I'm waiting, I might as well get started and just get all these in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna use pop rivets, 1/8 inch, and yeah, let's do it. Top row is done. This thing's starting to come to life. I'll be honest, not really a huge fan of how shiny the rivets are, but honestly, at the end of the day, they serve a function. Function over fashion, I suppose. Look at that. All the holes been populated. This is like completely DIY. You know, I bought these panel mounts myself. You know, I commissioned someone to make this plate, but I diagrammed it myself, putting the rivets in and just mounting this myself. It just it's giving me a whole different appreciation for people that actually do this stuff for a living. So I have another one of those to make, but I'm gonna take a bit of a break. My hand's starting to cramp a little bit from the rivet gun. Another thing I forgot to mention, they actually cut the holes too small for the rivets to go through. I said 1/8, and they're like just smaller than 1/8. So like these rivets just will not fit through here. So rather than going to get like an expander or something, I actually had a screwdriver in my room, and the shaft is actually 1/8 of an inch. So what I did was I just shoved the screwdriver through there, and since this is 16 gauge aluminum is a softer metal, so I literally just used the teeth of the screwdriver, twisted the hole bigger to get the rivets to fit through. So that took a lot of effort, so I have to do that for this. I'm not looking forward to it, so I'm going to take a tiny bit of a break. We'll do the second plate too. Got the holes widened out. Didn't take me nearly as long this time, now that I've done it once. The worst part is I'm gonna have to do this 2 more times when I get the other plates back from the company. We'll deal with that when it comes. So let's get all of these installed, get this thing finished off so I can go take a nap because my fingers hurt, everything hurts, pain. All right, we're all done. Finally, got both my mounting plates done. All the male connectors have been installed. They look amazing. I'm very happy with how this turned out. Yeah, when you do the work yourself, it's always much more satisfying. So yeah, that's that. As soon as I get the plates back, for the female connectors, I will do those too. The plates for the female connectors are finally in. So I'm gonna go ahead, put the connectors in, rivet everything. I gotta talk a little quietly because it's late at night. My folks are sleeping, so I don't wanna wake them up. But I'm gonna have to do the same thing where I need to take the screwdriver and widen out all the holes so they're 1/8. So I'll do that. And then I will install the female connectors. Got all the holes widened out now. Now that I've done it once, the second time was actually a lot easier. I ripped through these pretty fast. It only took about 20 minutes. So now I'm gonna start populating each hole with these female connectors. Just put these through, rivet them in. Pretty straightforward stuff. The plates have been riveted through. Got all the connectors installed. They look really nice. The female plates are done. The male plates are done too. I mean, like, these look sharp. I'm really happy with how these came out. So yeah, I'm going to kind of measure out, see how much cable I need, and then yeah, I'll solder one end of these and just leave the cable blank on the other end. So when I install them on the riser, I can feed the cable through and then solder these at the other end and just screw them on. The fun part, building the actual riser. My good friend Michael Christopher offered to help, and that was amazing because he's a contractor with decades of experience building stuff. And myself, I'm not very good at this stuff. So he did a lot of the work here. I just simply diagrammed it out and he basically made it happen. So in total, we used 6 sheets of 4x10 3/4 inch plywood, and then a bunch of sticks of 2x6 for the internal framing. So what we did first was we put the tops, we glued them on with PL Premium, and then wood screwed them in with 3-inch wood screws just to make sure they're super secure and they weren't going to squeak. That's what the glue was nice for. And then we added the locking casters with lag screws to the tops, and then afterwards we cut holes and added the bottoms to each piece. And man, they were so heavy. It was ridiculous afterwards having to haul them around. But it was a fun experience. This took about 3 hours in total, and I couldn't be more happier. It is break time. A lot of work done. We got most of the riser built. So this is Michael's equipment here. Break time, a well-deserved break for Michael here. How you feeling? Good. It's a good day. You maybe wake up really early, but hey, if that's a trade-off for getting this thing done, then I'll take it, you know?
I always say, if you get a phone call, somebody says, you know, hey, meet me here at 8:30, I'll give you $500. And you go, I don't know, I kind of sleep in and stuff like that. And the other line goes, click.
Door here. Look at that. So here's the riser in all its glory. It's not done yet, obviously, but the guts are done. The skeleton is there. So you got all the framing. Biggest thing is the casters were all locking casters, so I can lock it in place. I got space to put things inside, so all this crap over here in these boxes, I can literally take every single one of that and just slide it underneath through the riser. So this is literally all the space that I need. And then I'll do a sandwich layer of moving blankets, another sheet of plywood on top, and then my kit underneath some carpet. So I got room for all my patch bays, which are those panel connectors that I was populating earlier. Really happy with how things turned out. So a little bit of a break, and then we will continue where we left off. Next, we started adding the moving blankets, and midway through, I ended up slicing my finger open. Oh, I'm really doing it. The beauty of working with wood, you tend to cut yourself sometimes, so I gotta clean this up. It didn't really come across on camera that well, but I cut myself really good and I was bleeding a lot. So we used 2 layers of moving blankets and then added the final piece of plywood to the top. Alright, so we got the riser pretty much built. It's not 100% done, nowhere near 100%, but like the actual framing and skeleton of it is done, which was huge. So we got a layer of plywood, then 2 layers of moving blankets, another layer of plywood. Then you have the 2x6s, which you saw laid down like this, and then 1 final layer of plywood at the bottom, the casters. So I gotta go find some more heavy duty latches, because these ones actually broke. I put too much tension on them and they just snapped. They were too cheap, so I gotta find heavy duty ones. But that's everything that I'm gonna do today. I am hooped, absolutely wiped. Even just moving all this stuff up in here, I'm really tired. But I want to say a big thank you to Michael for lending me his time and really helping me make this. He did the majority of the work. I diagrammed this out. I showed him the diagram. He was very kind to just be like, hey, leave it with me. You know, I'll have a look at it. I'll let you know what I can do. Kindness is a lost art, and so you know, I really, really appreciate his kindness. It's really, really nice of him to do that for me. The next step would probably be just kind of measuring out what cable length I need to, you know, where my solder points are going to be for the patch bays, just figuring out, you know, where I want to put those, and then just finding black carpet to put on the top, and just getting some actual proper curtain material on the fronts. I'm going to chop all these moving blankets off, because I think they look gross. They look bad. So I'm going to get some nice proper canvas or curtain material to put on the bottom, but that is all we are going to do today. Next, I got working on the carpet that I was going to use in the very top. I tried so hard to find just a black area rug in an 8x10 configuration, and it just simply does not exist. So I bought an 8x10 area rug off of Facebook Marketplace for like $70, then used a ton of RIT dye. So the first coat I used a spray bottle, and the subsequent coats I used a spray machine, and I ended up getting a nice result at the end, but this was an extremely arduous task. This coat here, I didn't wait long enough to really get any effect out of it, so this was a waste. And then this was the next coat after that, so this is where the carpet really started getting black. This is the 5th coat of a RIT dye, and now it was really black, and then I used RIT Color Stay dye fixative, and you can see how that just really removed all that brown out of the carpet. After all the dyeing, this carpet is looking really good actually. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. This was 6 total coats of dye, 4 just kind of half and half, like half water, and then 2 bottles of RIT dye, just mixed with salt and some dish soap. And then the 5th coat was 2 black, 2 charcoal gray, and then dish soap and salt. The final was 4 bottles of RIT Color Stay dye fixative, and the dye fixative actually made this thing really just kind of get that color looking nice. You know, this carpet had a pattern. Now that it's been dyed, you can't really even see the pattern anymore, which is awesome, unless you come right up to it. As you can see kind of here, there's like a pretty wicked border. There's certain areas in the rug that just didn't accept the dye. It just didn't soak in at all. This turned out great, so I'm gonna let this dry out. I'm gonna go ahead and start soldering. So I'm gonna solder all the cables to the female adapters. So these are gonna go on the top of the platforms. If this is the riser, you know, these would be embedded like this. Microphones connected, plug into here, and then the output would be like down here. If that makes sense. And then that would be the male connectors, which would output to the wall or to the board or whatever plugging into. So I'm gonna solder 10-foot cables to this side, 10-foot wire, and then leave the other blank so I can thread it through the riser. and then have all the cabling spilling out the front, and that's where I can trim off the rest and then solder the male connectors to the front. So as far as the soldering itself, I've got a lot of XLR cable. This is 170 feet right here. I've got another 150 feet in another bag. So I'm gonna take 10-foot sections, cut them out. So I'm just gonna use scissors, measure out 10 feet, cut, get 13. And then I've also got a silver Sharpie that I can, mark on the actual cable what number it is. Because when it's threaded through the riser, they're gonna get all twisted with each other. And I won't know which cable connects to where. So I'm gonna use this silver Sharpie once I've got everything soldered in one of them, to just mark the other end, 1, 2, 3, 4. So when I go to solder them to the male connector, I'll know which cable to solder where.
I took a ruler and measured out 10 feet and then cut the initial cable, and then every subsequent cable I lined up with that first cable that I'd cut, so it was all consistent. I just used a pair of scissors and just kept cutting the XLR until eventually I ended up with all the pieces that I needed, and I just, coiled them up to make a nice little neat pile on the floor. So I had 28 piles in total.
Got all the cables cut up on the ground right now. Nice big pile there. So that's 28 10-foot rolls. You might be wondering, oh, but the panels are only 24 connectors. Well, it's because I've got a secondary connector on each. That's housing 2, so 2 plus 2 equals 4. And that's just basically 1 MIDI and 1 1/4 inch on each one times 2, so 4. So that's where I'm getting my 28 from. So I'm not doing the secondary connectors today. I'm gonna start doing some cable prep, and that will be the next step.
Cable prep was pretty simple. Just basically used the cable stripper, isolated the hot, the neutral, and the ground wires, and then just used my soldering iron to just tin everything, just to make my life easier when it came to finally soldering.
I've got 12 cables prepped, so I'm gonna finish off one of the plates and then set that aside, and then take a break, and then I'll do another 12 and finish off the other plate. The 4 that are left, I will do a different day. I've just, in the meantime, just off camera, just put a little bit of tape in some pieces and just kind of made a little cable snake to make it easier. I've marked the ends of each wire just with a silver Sharpie, just like a corresponding number, 1 to 1, 2 to 2, so on and so forth. So now I'm going to go ahead and solder them to the mounting plates. So now I'm going to go ahead and solder this to that guy over there.
This is why cable prep is so important. It makes your job so much easier when it comes to soldering. Because I had every single cable tinned and isolated, it was an absolute breeze to get everything soldered. I had 0 cold joints, everything melted perfectly, got everything solid on there, no loose connections. It all worked out really well.
I've got them all soldered up. So some of these, the cups kind of move around. It's hard to tell because my camera isn't the highest quality, but you can kind of see there, it's moving around. Some are more exaggerated than others. But this whole time I've been using a cable end on the other side just to kind of plug in and keep it anchored just so the pins don't move around. Yeah, so it's all soldered up. Don't really know what to say as far as how they turned out. I mean, I won't be able to test them until I've got the other side soldered in too, but luckily I've cut more cable than I need. So when I've got them soldered in, if I need to make any corrections, I can just unscrew the plate and just pull it out. And I'll have about 6 inches of kind of wiggle room to work with, which is more than enough. The rest I will probably do off camera. This was a lot of time. This took a lot of hours to do, but once both plates are done, I'll cut that in. Got it all done now. So these are the finished soldering jobs. The second one went a heck of a lot better than the first one did. Probably about half the time, just because now that I did it once, I had a lot of experience to do it the second time a lot better. So really happy with how that went. The next step will be go to the studio and just kind of like drilling out the square on the top to put the top panel through and then threading the cables through, and I still have to make the face plates. And I'm just really proud of how far I've come with soldering. I was, no good at this not too long ago. I picked up some very ambitious jobs as far as my first soldering jobs went. So I'm really happy with how this went. The soldering job is good, no loose connections, everything's nice and solid, there's no shorts. I put a lot of effort into the cable prep, which, if you spend the extra little mile on the cable prep, then when it comes to soldering, it just makes it a whole heck of a lot easier. Happy with this. Now it's time to move on to the next task.
The aforementioned next task was creating the secondary panels, so I bought 4 plastic blanks, like gang plates, electrical plates, and then drilled holes through them. 1 hole for a MIDI chassis connector, and then the other hole for a 1/4-inch stereo headphone jack connector. So I just used a drill with a bit on it, and then afterwards I began soldering. So this is where those secondary connectors came in that I was talking about. The MIDI is nice because if you're using triggers or if you wanted to put a keyboard on the riser, you can connect it and then send it through. And the 1/4-inch is really nice for receiving headphone mixes from the control room. Having a stereo TRS jack was key for that. Afterwards, I began drilling holes to send all the connectors through. So I used a drill with an auger bit to cut the initial hole, then used a jigsaw to kind of carve out a nice square for where the panel would go through. And then I took the same drill with a different auger bit, a really long one, and drilled through the sides. I did a terrible job not planning to kind of install the cables. When we initially built the riser, it would have been so much easier to drill all the holes then. It just made my job a heck of a lot harder, but eventually I got all the holes drilled out. I was able to feed all the cable through, and then I began to work on drilling through the secondary connectors, and then I just basically fed all that soldered cable snake through all the holes, and then just ended up pulling it out the front, and then just mounted just temporarily the jack or the other mounting plate to the front, and did the same thing for the other side. It was brutal. This was so difficult to get everything through just because it was like 4 feet deep, and obviously my arms aren't long enough to reach, so I had to use kind of one of those like garbage tongs, and I just got no leverage with it. So I made my life so much harder not doing it initially when we were building the riser. Then afterwards, once the cables were threaded through, I began soldering the other end, and this was difficult because I had to, either lie on my stomach or sit on my butt. I couldn't really lift the whole riser up onto a table because the thing's too heavy, and so this took quite a long time. Another thing I forgot to mention, I ended up chopping all that moving blanket that was flowing out. I cut it all off at the sides, and then my mom and I actually stitched together black canvas, and we used that all around the perimeter of the riser just to make it look really nice, almost like a stage. And then once everything was soldered, I took all the stuff off the top, I cut the carpet in half, and then I replaced the old clips or the old latches with butterfly latches, like ones you find on road cases or flight cases. And then I drilled holes through the top of the riser and just fed zip ties through just to secure all that cable that was going through the riser to the top, so it was nice and out of the way, so I could feed, all my stuff through the middle, through the shelving area, and it wouldn't contact the cables, it wouldn't move them around or anything. And this was also something that I should have done when I initially built the riser, but I didn't. That's just how it goes sometimes. Then after I did that, I used Gorilla Tape to tape off the sides, kind of like binding, where I'd cut the carpet, and the riser at this point was pretty much done. All right, well, the riser is pretty much done. I can't really go any closer with the camera than when I'm standing, just because it's plugged into the wall. There's still a few little small details left to do. I'm gonna do those some other day. I'm absolutely whooped. Today just took everything out of me. Just getting the zip ties through the riser to get the cables underneath secured to the top, so it's out of the way of any storage underneath, and cutting the carpet and all that stuff just took everything out of me. So I'm gonna put everything back on top like it was when I got here, and I will come back some other time for the final day of work on this bloody riser. At this point, there wasn't really much left to do. I bought a roll of gaff tape and used that to cover up the fronts, so I lifted up the canvas, and where the moving blankets I'd cut off, it was fraying. So I just covered that up with gaff tape to make it look nice. I replaced the binding down the middle with gaff tape as well. And then I just began fixing some loose grounds on the TRS headphone connectors. Then afterwards, my cousin came by and helped me cable test all the XLR connectors, so all 24 connections. Luckily, they were all good, so all my solder joints were perfect, nothing was wrong. And then afterwards, he helped me move the banner so it was centered to the room, and then we finally moved the stage to its final resting place. It is finally done. Very happy. Big thank you to my cousin, Garnvier. He helped me a lot through all of this. Big shout out to Michael as well. He has done so much. He has contributed so much to this project, helped me with the initial build of the actual stage. Now, it's all done. All the wiring is done. The cables have been all kind of clamped to the top and inside, so you can, you know, pass stuff through the inside without having to worry about hitting the cables. The connections are all good. All 3 pins on each and every single one showed up, which is excellent. The clasps are holding this entire thing together. The gaff tape in the middle is looking a lot better than the acrylic tape was. I've moved the banners to that. Now it's in the center. The stage is also in the center of the room. I couldn't be more happy. So there you have it. That is my dream riser built. Next, I'll assemble the drum set and get it all ready to go, but that'll be in a different video. So we'll look forward to you then. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you.